fact. Apologies for a little bit of a late start. Had some technical things. Had some other things going on. That's fine. But there is a lot to read. Namely because I wanted to kind of get through as much of my backlog, especially library backlog that I have had sitting around for far too long, considering they're library books. So I think first, yeah. I hope everyone has had a wonderful week, stayed safe, stayed healthy, all that good stuff. So, I think, there's not as many digital titles that I read this week compared to last week, so I won't have to juggle around between multiple things like I did then. But I will start with the digital stuff first, I think, just because, I don't actually have the books in front of me, as it were. So first up for the digital stuff, welcome to the live stream, Rin. I hope you've had a wonderful day. First up, I read Orange Future, or the 6th volume of Orange. This is a follow-up sequel, kind of spin-off about kind of the what if scenario of Orange. If you're not familiar with Orange, somehow it is a kind of romantic drama about a teenage girl who receives a letter from her future self, giving her instructions to help her save this boy in her class. Welcome to the live stream, SimCard08. And in doing so, prevent his suicide within the year of him transferring to the school. So there's kind of, like with a lot of these high school romance drama series, there's a romantic love triangle thing going on here, or male romantic rivalry. And we find out, or we know pretty much from the start, that because of this other guy's death, the other guy, the other friend, one, quote unquote one, they ended up together and had, a young child and all this other stuff. But presumably, because of this alternate history they're creating, trying to save this guy's life, that future will disappear. So this book is kind of developing how, hello, welcome to the live stream, 365801. It's developing how these characters kind of got together, even though they both had, feelings for this guy who died, and how this future happened, and why things were the way they were in this original future. It's good. I liked it. I think most people who are a fan of the series or of the characters also like it and know, I think it's nice to get into more of the rivalry characters a bit, actually make them characters rather than just someone who's there to fight over a girl or a guy and not really have much personality aside from that. So yeah, it was good. I'm glad that I finally finished it. It only took me far too long. far too long, because I read Orange a long time ago. So it's nice to revisit it. Not the main series, obviously, but nice to revisit the story and the characters again. I had pretty fond memories of Orange. I think it's very well regarded, for good reason. It's not my favorite thing ever, obviously, but I do think it's quite genuine. So it was nice. It was nice to see this character and his see his life and how things worked out. Is there a volume 7? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Takano just never wanted to stop writing Orange. It's certainly one of her most popular works, but I kind of want her to work on her new series. Hello, Ray. Welcome to the live stream. You are up late, young lady. I don't know why you come. Go to sleep. But so after that, well, the other digital title that I read this week was No Vampire, No Happy Ending, Volumes 1 and 2 by Shinya. This, I mean, that's also kind of fair. That's not, it's not hugely similar, but in a lot of ways, the premise isn't similar, but in a lot of ways, it is similar to a lot of other things. But we're not talking, we're finished with Orange. Orange is good. It's solid. I thought Future was a good follow-up, or Volume 6 or whatever was a good follow-up to the series itself. I don't know why my nose is itchy. Apologies. But so, yes. Then I read No Vampire, No Happy Ending. I read the first half of this on Mangamo. And then I knew that it was only 2 volumes, so I was like, well, I'll just read the second half. I'll just, get the digital copy from Tokyo Pop, and I read it, and it's so where to start with this one. It's a comedy series, maybe a romantic comedy. It's not really a romantic comedy. It's a comedy series about this girl who lives in this town, and there's a castle there, and there's a legend about a vampire, and everyone has, the legends about this girl who goes to meet the vampire, and the townsfolk, I don't know, attack the vampire to save her, and then she died. I don't know. There's some people don't like vampires, but this girl, she freaking loves vampires. She is the original Twilight fangirl, honestly. She's constantly being made fun of by her grandma and her younger brother. Her family runs like a inn restaurant thing. I'd say just a restaurant. I don't think they have guests that stay there. So it's not an inn, it's a restaurant. But they always make fun of her because she's written 14 notebooks of self-insert, trashy vampire romance. Ray, yes. And then one day her brother goes missing for a little while, or he doesn't come back, and it's getting pretty late, so she goes out to try and find him. She ends up at this creepy castle, and there she meets this mysterious, handsome young man called Devo. I think his name is Devo. I don't remember her name. I don't remember a lot of characters' names. And who she kind of realizes or believes is a vampire. He's got the fangs. He's really hot. He's all everything. He's amazing and perfect. But he has no idea, 1, who he is, 2, what a vampire is, 3, anything about anything. He's basically a baby. And so she's like, well, I'm not gonna let this chance get away from me, because there's an actual real life vampire right in front of me. My dreams are coming true. Therefore, I can train him. I can train him to be my perfect vampire boyfriend. And then it'll be great. And so that's basically the premise. And he's like, because he's a baby, he kind of doesn't really understand anything, but he's like, okay, because she's like, I'll help you become a kick-ass vampire if you make me your vampire, queen or whatever. If basically, if you date me, if we become sexy vampires together forever. And he's like, okay, that's fine. And then she goes hormonally a bit crazy, and it's hard cut, and you're like, oh, dang. It's hard to fade to black. But we know that that's too easy. This isn't how things are gonna go. The next chapter, chapter 2, was the only time I laughed, and it was kind of in disbelief because it came so out of left field, because she wakes up in bed next to this guy who's completely naked, and so she's like, assuming some things. And she kind of gets all flustered and falls out of the bed, and he's like, "What's wrong?" Buck naked. But then she notices that he's missing some kind of important uh some important elements of the male human body, which would imply that, nothing scandalous actually happened. And he says as much, like, "You ripped my clothes off and then, like, you passed out." I don't know. It was a weird thing. And she's like, "What happened?" And the thing that made me laugh is just straight up. She's like, "You have no dick." And I wasn't expecting it. It was like a big just reaction. And I laughed. And I was like, what? I mean, that would maybe be a deal breaker for a lot of people. But no. She marches on. She's like, "I will." He is a Ken doll. He's basically a Ken doll. And there's a reason for this. It doesn't explain it in the manga itself, but all the notes afterward, I'll get into it, right? I'll get into it. But so she's teaching him all these things, and because he's a baby, he doesn't, not a physical baby, but he's like too dumb to live, that sort of just doesn't know anything about anything. So she tries to get him to help around the restaurant, and he keeps breaking stuff. He brings in a lot of people, but because he's pretty, but otherwise not very helpful. And then through sheer coincidence, they run into like a local exactly, no, do you know, happy ending. They run into this local, like, actress woman there, who's like a friend, and she always plays the part of the girl in this play about the vampire legend, and it's like coming up to the anniversary, so they're practicing, but she's sick. And so, the other actors in her troupe are like, "You need to look after yourself, and there's no understudy because you always run them off because no one can be as talented as you." But then she's like, "You shall take my place as the heroine of this play." And she points to this vampire boy, and he's like, "Okay, it is Rin. It is. It's not interesting. Like, there's a lot of. It's a weird thing, but it gets kind of weird and wild, and we're gonna. Not weird. Not wild. It gets weird because what it seems to be at the first chapter is like not what it ends as. So he becomes the actress for this show, and everybody freaking loves it. And they learn that if he eats words, because he like put the script in his mouth, and then he can recite the words perfectly. So that's how he learns stuff. There's this thing. They have the show. It's amazing. All of that. And then after that, I'm trying also not to sneeze. It's like, is a sneeze going? No. After that, there's like a vampire hunter and a Dampier, and they're there. And they're like, "We believe you're a vampire," but then all of their anti-vampire stuff doesn't work on this guy. And they're like, "What? We shall go." And then after that, they meet other vampires. They meet like these four like a vampire queen or princess or whatever, and her three, ladies in waiting or whatever. And they've been hiding in the shadows of this town because they don't want to be run out. So they've opened this cat girl cafe to try and steal people's blood, but they don't actually like bite people. They just, I guess, take a little bit of blood from people, and they all share. It's this thing. And so she's like, well, her plan. So this girl, the main character, she kind of forgets about her vampire boyfriend for the second half of the series. She's like, well, there's other real vampires here. I'm more invested in them, and I want, you know, none of you vampires to be killed by this vampire slayer. So what we're gonna do, our plan, is that we're going to make it so that everyone knows about vampires, right? We're going to like expose you to the world, and the way that the end, and but in a way that like won't make people want to kill them. And the way that they do that, she's like, it's a foolproof plan. We'll make you a vampire idol girl group. So that's what she does, and she spends weeks training these girls for this upcoming show where they're going to like show that there's vampires are real. Meanwhile, the boy is like completely forgotten about. He's reading all her self-insert fan fiction, so he's learning about like her perfect vampire boyfriend, so he's like modeling himself. It's so weird. And then it's not gay. Well, I think this girl is vampire sexual, so really any vampire she's ready for, she's there for. But basically then the town finds out, and from this girl group, and they're all like, yeah, we love vampires now. And then the vampire hunter's like, dang it, because he was about to, slay the guy vampire, because now he's gotten vampire weaknesses because he's learned all this shit from the self-insert fan fiction. And it all wraps up. It's a happy ending. And the Dampier, who's like the vampire hunter's assistant, is a 13-year-old boy, and he like falls in love with one of the vampire like lady in waiting, who is the most mature looking out of all of them. So I was like, that's a big yikes. And then it ended, and I was like, that was a weird waste of time. Like, it was just very unfocused. I mean, I guess sort of plot elements linked together, but really it wasn't anything. And then, so that finished. Thanks, Sir John. Welcome to the live stream. When it finished, it had the author's notes, and it had all of these notes about like, oh yes, actually, this girl, her little brother, was actually a vampire the whole time and in secret, and he placed false memories in her. I'm like, what? That never came up at all. And then you find out that the grandma met like the original vampire lord of the area when she was a young lady, who looks exactly like the guy. And then you find out that this vampire boy isn't really a vampire at all. He's basically like not a clone. We're going to talk about clones today, but not a clone. He's like I guess a homunculus for this vampire in the future to, I don't know, transfer his consciousness into something, which is why he doesn't have a dick, I presume. And they're just I was like, this is weird. There's a whole lot of information to be cramming into the last 3 pages. I really felt like he had a lot of ideas, but also like not a lot of focus and not a lot of time to cover any of this. So yeah, wasn't great. Rain, the thing is that it's hard to, I feel like I repeat myself when I talk about like right. I mean, true. But even as a vampire fan, I don't think you'd like this. I mean, you might like the bratty vampire queen. But yeah. The thing is about bad or stuff that I don't enjoy, is that I feel like when it's a good thing, when it's a series I do like, I'm content, and like I feel like there's enough positive stuff about it. I do try to I do try to be generally positive and encourage people to read the stuff that I do like. But I feel like also when there's something bad, uniquely bad about a series, I just need to I need to get into it. And hopefully it's generally entertaining for you guys, because otherwise I am talking to myself for an hour and a half for no reason. It's already been 20 minutes. Holy moly. But yes, I know she's iconic, so yeah. I don't think that's a bad thing. So we got through that. One that was fine, one that was just like weird and made me just go, what? Why did that? It wasn't even funny. And that's the thing. Like, anyway. So next I'm going to talk about, what should I talk about? So I started a couple series. Well, actually, no, I'll talk about, I completed some series, or, well, I guess start and finished some series this week. The first being Aka 13 PS, which is the spin-off sequel-ish of the main Aka series by Natsume. This follows the 5... Where are they? 5 officers? The 5 chief officers. Sort of when they're being assigned to their roles and what they come into the roles with. Kind of their preemptive plans and expectations for themselves, gets into a little more of the territory politics. I mean, it's good. It's not one that you'd want to read if you hadn't read the original Aka. As always, it's pretty typical Natsume artwork. I still really like her style. I think it's, if you're invested and interested in the 5 chief officers in particular, then I do think it's worth the read. It's also this one in particular. Pardon me. This one focuses more on the officers. This one focuses more on, well, these characters here. Notably, this guy. I don't remember his name. Chairman Owl. And sort of his background that is important to the main story, and his experience throughout the entire timeline, which is pretty, like, I thought it was quite effective. You also get a bit more about Nino from his perspective and from his father's perspective too. I mean, it's more of the same. If you liked this series, then you'll probably enjoy this. If you didn't like this series, you probably won't like this, unless you're particularly attached to any of these characters. I mean, it's good. It's exactly what I expect from Natsume. It's exactly what I expect from Aka. It doesn't fix the racism, but it also doesn't make it any worse. It kind of just doesn't touch on it whatsoever, which isn't good. Like, it's not a good thing, but it's also not like, oh yes, the brown people are absolutely evil because they're brown. Like, it's a little bit more. I mean, it just doesn't address it, which is not, it's not a good thing, but it's also not what's the word? It's not proactively trying to be hateful or anything. I think we both, in our discussion about it, it's not that it's a purposeful thing, which, again, It's not, I don't know if it would be classified as deep. I wouldn't call it deep. I'd call it maybe, well, it's Ono. The stakes aren't ever really that high. It presents itself somewhat of an espionage, but not really. And it is more of a slice of life kind of look into a political system versus and the bureaucracy of that system versus like any grand plot. There's a little bit of a mystery twist, but not really. Halfway through the original series. So again, your mileage may vary with it. I liked it, but you know, I liked the original, so I'm glad you're getting good recommendations in the chat for your trash, Ray. Thank you, Rin, for the recommendations. So that's the first thing I read, and then something a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more I don't know, I more purposefully recommend to people and more easily recommend to people is Haru's Curse by Asuka Konishi. This is a omnibus release from Vertical. So it contains both volumes in this single volume. And this is a drama, romantic drama, about a young woman who, after the untimely death of her younger sister, starts dating said deceased sister's fiance, and their conflicted feelings about that. Their somewhat rocky relationship, not with each other, but with the perception of each other and the people around them. It's obviously the sister especially, there's so much guilt tied into this relationship, but she can't really fight against the feelings that she's naturally developed over the course of her time knowing this guy. And so the reason it's called Haru's Curse is because she feels like her sister has because her sister is Haru, but has cursed her with the knowledge that, you know, she was the one originally in the relationship. She was the one who was in love with this man. And by moving on, by being happy together without her, you know, she's not going to, even in death, right? She's still going to be upset about it. And it's really, really, really wonderful. I think it's a beautiful story about relationships and also love, not just romantic love, but familial love, platonic love. There's a lot of, and also the heaviness of grief, the euphoria of realizing your own freedom as well, but then the confliction that has as well with a situation, with a very unfortunate situation. I would really enjoy being able to read more of this creator's work. I've heard pretty good things. I do hope we see more of her stuff in English. Got color pages in there, both in the start and ending. And I think there's just a really, I don't know, the artwork is quite lovely. I think it's just a really wonderful human story that isn't, even if you've never been in that situation, and even if you couldn't see yourself making the decisions that these characters make, I do think that there's a lot of relatability here and a lot of understanding of feeling conflicted about the choices, because ultimately it doesn't put one form of love, one form of feeling over the other. And it highlights the value of both of those, but then also not being stuck and wallowing in grief at the sake of your own life. I think it's really, really good. I don't think I need to. Well, maybe I should encourage people to read this, but I don't. My excitement or happiness or enjoyment, quote unquote, of this work is not unique. I think most people who've read this, everyone that I know who's read this, has really found it phenomenal. And so if you haven't read it and it sounds like something you'd be interested in, I would encourage you to get it. And I hope we see more from her as well, because it's dang wonderful. Yeah. So something good. And then on another, well, yeah. So then after that, I read I'll talk about this one, I think. I read, where is it? Where's my banner go? I read Flying Witch, Volume 1 and 2. This was thanks to my library. It's one that I'd wanted to try for a little while, but also it's not one that was like super high priority on my buying list. It's not that I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but it's already long. There's like 9 volumes, and I have so many like low fantasy or magical realism slice of life series in my collection as it is, and I haven't seen the anime either, so I couldn't really I didn't have any impressions really on how this would be. But yeah, so this is by Chihiro Ishizuka, another vertical release, I guess a Kodansha release now. And this is the story of this 15-year-old teen girl, Makoto, who goes to visit her or live with her cousins, distant cousins, in Aomori. And yeah, it's basically her day-to-day life as kind of a witch in training, sort of, I guess, like Kiki. And so it's just that, right? She hangs out with her cousins. She's got a male cousin who's like her same age, so they're in the same class, and they're quite close. And then he's got a little sister, and she didn't know anything about witches, so it was quite a shock when, her cousin starts flying on a broomstick. There's another one of their classmates as well who's kind of in on this whole secret. And it's quite sweet. It's quite lovely. It has pretty good comedic timing. It kind of, in a sense, reminds me of, it's definitely like a soothing sort of series. It reminds me a little bit of like Barakamon, obviously with magic. It reminds me a little bit of something like Kiki. It's quite sweet. It's quite lovely. It is one that, at least for now, I'm probably going to just keep reading via my library or via digital releases. I think I have a couple of these volumes thanks to a Humble Bundle many a while ago. And so her sister comes to visit, and she's a pain in the butt. The sister's friend is another witch, and she thinks that the sister turned her into so she's a furry now. She turns into this like dog lady. Some magic went wrong, and now she's, during the day, she's like an anthropomorphic dog, and at night she's not fine. She's normal. But yeah, it got like giggles from me. It's not one that's, got a huge amount of plot or anything in it. It's just a soothing Yashike series, And I can definitely see why it's popular. I can definitely see why why people enjoy it. I'm interested to see how good the anime is, because I've heard pretty good things about that one as well. But yeah, Flying Witch is sweet. It's what it needs to be. If you like this sort of thing, I don't think it'll disappoint you. It does remind me a lot of stuff, but it does, the execution of those things are pretty good. So yeah. Another, I guess, because this is sort of comedy, slice of life comedy. We have another comedy, a little more heavy on the comedy. I read a whole chunk of this, and that is Orasama Teacher, volumes 16 to 20. So we have volume 16, volume 17, volume 18, volume 19. You look, this changed the style of the covers. It's really, you can tell exactly when Viz kind of rejuvenated itself. And then volume 20. So this is, I'm going to keep this one out because this one had the funniest joke. So this is by Izumi Tsubaki. This is the same creator as Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. I've said this before because I've read quite a bit of this recently. I find Nozaki-kun much funnier than this. This isn't unfunny, but it's also not as funny. This is a story of a high school girl who, in middle school, she was the boss of like all of these delinquents, but she kept getting into too many fights, and I think she got what is it called? She got kicked out of school, and so her mother like sent her to this fancy school away, and now she's trying to hide her dark past. She's trying to reinvent herself, but she keeps ending up in all of these shenanigans. She's not really smart enough to pull off an entirely new identity. And so now she's in the public morals club because the school is under threat. And her childhood friend / teacher, who is the grandson of the founder of the school, he's trying to save the school. The current principal and his son, who is the head of the student council, or the president of the student council, they have a bet, right? These two groups have a bet, and if the principal wins, then he gets total control of the school, and he wants to bulldoze it and, start anew, start afresh, sell the land. I don't know. I don't really remember, but he just wants to get rid of the school. So she, in order to help her childhood friend, and also he's blackmailing her because he knows her dark past, she joins the public morals club. She becomes friends with like this guy who's a tough guy and always gets into fights, but he also just doesn't know how to fight. This guy started on the student council, and he's like super infatuated with ninjas. He loves ninjas, and he calls himself. There's just a bunch of weirdos. There's just a bunch of weirdos in this series, and so every so often there's one of the student council members are trying to ruin them and get them to disband and whatever, and that's that's good to know. That also doesn't necessarily surprise me, but it also wouldn't surprise me because Viz doesn't really do these styles of covers anymore in general, so neither here nor there. But yeah, so this kind of, the first 2 volumes in this that I was reading was it was a decently strong character arc. We had a bunch of people leave the public morals club because they were being blackmailed, and so they were trying to, and we find out who's responsible, and they were friends the whole time, and so it's kind of this realization of wow, we were actually friends. Which they should have known but they're all idiots. Like, all of these characters are idiots, which is fine because everyone in Nozaki-kun is also an idiot. They're likable, fun, like, easy to like, and enjoyable and silly idiots. And case in point, the funniest joke, and as I said, I think maybe this series isn't as effective with its humor because it's like a more normal manga. If you've read Nozaki-kun, that's mainly 4-koma, which I think works a little bit well with Tsubaki's humor. But okay, so this storyline, our main character, she goes back home for the summer, and her number 2 in command when she was a delinquent, he's got the biggest crush on her. He's just like, oh my gosh. And then the number 3, or like the co-vice president or whatever, he asks her like how her new life is and how she is at school, and she lies. I don't know why she lies. It's kind of instinctually she lies and says like, oh yeah, I'm really popular. And so this guy who has a big crush on her is like, oh my god, she's really popular. Oh no, like, I bet she goes on all these dates, and he's worried, right? Because he likes her, so he wants to know more about what's going on. So he asks her, and she basically just describes all her friends because all of her friends are guys, but there's nothing really romantic there. But she's floundering. She's like, I'm actually not popular. I don't know why I lied, but now I can't admit that I lied. And this guy seems really interested, so I don't want to let him down, so I'm just going to keep the lie going, right? And then it gets to a point where she's like, okay, well, how about you and I go on a date so I can prove that I'm actually super popular and go on all these dates? And he's like, okay. And again, she knows nothing. She's never been on a date. She's also an idiot, so she doesn't have any kind of common sense as to what a date may entail. So they're going to this summer festival. They're walking down the street. She's come to pick him up. And she does this kneeling thing. And she's like, this is how I always escort my dates. And he's like, this is how she always, because again, he's an idiot too. He's like, oh my god, her dating is so high level. I could never. But they're walking down, and she's like, look at the sky. And he's like, okay, okay, well, I'm looking at the sky. And she's like, you see that light? You see that bright light up there? The brightest light. And he's like, yeah, okay, I see that. She's like, the brightest light. And he's like, yes. And she's like, that's a star. And I was like, oh my. It was the page turn because it's like that. And then she just looks. She's just so she loves it. And he's just like, what? Yeah, I know, actually. I'm aware of what stars are. And she does it like two more times. And he's like, you don't have to impress me by knowing what stars are. I'm aware of stars. Anyway, of course, idiocy ensues, and they're silly. And yeah. It's a fun time. It's one that I'm happy to read via my library because it's 29 volumes, so I'm 2/3 of the way through at this point. It's very long, and as I said, it's just not as funny, not as effectively funny as the alternative. So, yeah, or Summer Teacher is good. If you like Tsubaki's other work, you may want to try this out. But I would recommend Nozaki-kun over this pretty much any and every day. I had to sneeze, so apologies. So, after that, what did I read after that? Gonna save that stuff for later. So I started another series thanks to my library. Oh, did I? Oh, no, I didn't. I'm gonna have to put it in. What is this called? Well, anyway. I don't have a banner for this, and it doesn't want to let me add a new banner. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to, very professional, I know. Apologies. But this, I read volume 1 of Kaiju Girl Caramelized by Spika Aoki. This is an ongoing, I guess, shoujo series. Comedy, kind of romantic comedy about this girl who every so often, like when she feels, I guess, romantic, or when she feels happiness, when she feels love, parts of her body start to evolve in these like monstrous ways. She'll start growing a tail or horns or claws or whatever. And it's kind of out of her control. And so when she first like confessed her love to a boy at like 6 years old, right? She tries to give him a flower and her hand is all claw-like and he freaks out, right? Like, as so. He freaks out. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm never going to interact with anyone ever again. I'm not normal. I shouldn't like, and I definitely shouldn't interact with people because they'll find me freakish. And so she just becomes kind of this social outcast. Everyone calls her Psycho. Psycho? Yeah. But one day she kind of catches the eye of the most popular boy in school. Super hot, super nice guy. She's, you know, gone to sit on the stairs outside or whatever to avoid all her classmates who again are just aggravating her. And because he's so popular, people are always asking him for photos and, you know, to hang out with him, and he's just kind of sick of it. So he goes to hide out and he finds her there. And so he's like, oh, hi, like, sorry to crash your space. Do you mind if I hang out here? And she's like, yes, I do mind. Can you fucking not? And he's like, well, you know, I just find it really aggravating. I hate when people just kind of cling to me and always want to, you know, do this and whatever. And she's basically like, oh yeah, your life is so hard, Mr. Popular. Like the fact that everyone wants to be your friend and the fact that, you know, you're so attractive and blah, blah, blah. And she kind of, you know, goes off on him a little bit. And he's, you know, he's like happy and a little bit shocked, but he's never had someone talk to him like that before. And so he really appreciates her sincerity. And so the next day he comes to hang out with her at lunch again. And he invites her to have these pancakes, like these special edition pancakes that she wanted to go try but couldn't because she doesn't have any friends, and she's like, oh, you know, I'm not suited to that. This was really cute. I really liked this a lot. So they kind of go on this date, and then also her mother's like, she's just a bit of a free spirit. We find out that she was hatched. You know, she was a hatched child. But when her heartbeat, I guess, gets to a certain point, she evolves into this giant kaiju this giant kaiju, and she feels herself changing. So she's on the way home, like from this somewhat date, and she feels herself changing. She runs away. She falls into the river and changes into this like giant kaiju monster creature. And she's like, well, and at first she doesn't really realize that it's all real and that it wasn't like a weird dream that she had, but the news is reporting about it. Like a giant monster just appeared in the middle of the city. And she doesn't want this boy that she now is kind of like having feelings for and wanting to be friends with to realize that she's, you know, this monster. But when they were at lunch, he had kind of said, you know, he told her about himself and his own self-confidence issues and how he acts friendly and tries to be someone that everyone likes because he's also afraid of rejection. And so he finds her really inspiring because she's always herself and she doesn't worry about when people say bad things about her. So like he's legitimately like quite interested in her. He likes her a lot, but she's like, I can't be around this guy because I'm going to turn into this monster. And then there's another classmate she's just like way into kaiju. She wants to meet and probably marry a kaiju. And so there's like some miscommunication there, but she thinks the main character is like the priestess of this kaiju monster that she's infatuated with. And at the end of this book, we have her turning into a kaiju once again, big monster, Godzilla type creature, right after talking to this guy again. And so he's kind of like, how has there been the same monster pop up twice right after talking to this girl? I really liked it. I actually really liked this. It's sweet. I really want to read volume 2 now. I think it's a pretty fun premise. And obviously there's a lot of elements of like accepting yourself for who you are, but also like, holy shit, puberty is a wild time. Sometimes even more for some people. And of course, like the general feelings of growing up and falling in love, and it's hard to be a teenager, and sometimes it's hard being a teenager for some people than others. And yeah, I really liked this a lot. I thought it was really, really well done. I think this creator mentioned that she's a shoujo mangaka, and it like obviously the style and the idea, the premise is somewhat typical to that. Like it's a falling in love story, but and about a growing up, coming of age story for our main character. But it's also got a big monster and a very supportive mother for one. This mother is a little bit just too easygoing. Welcome to the live stream, Justy Cave. It has been a pretty alright time. But yeah, I definitely recommend this one. I liked it more. I just had really no expectations for this. I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard, I'd seen it around. I'd heard a little bit of discussion about it, but I didn't really follow up on it. I didn't really know anything. No one that I'm very close to, friends-wise, had read it, so I wasn't really sure on general recommendations, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was very, very good. So if this fun, weird, kooky little premise sounds like your thing, give it a shot. It's a Yen Press title. Yen Press. Next, well, okay. We're going to talk about Clamp last. So next we're going to talk about some BL. Both Tokyo Pop titles. One that was really good. One that was not very good. So the first one, I'll get it out of the way. The one that I wasn't super impressed with was The Treasure of the King and the Cat by Yo Kajika. Yo Kajika. Or Yu Kajika. And so this is it's marketed as a BL. It has two guys kiss briefly, and it has kind of a side couple. The two boys who just don't have the blushies. Well, they have the blushies for each other, but no actual progress in regards to relationship. And it's broken into two storylines. So we have the first, which focuses on these two. This guy is a half elf wizard, and then this guy is desperately in love with him, and also like always constantly visits him. He is also the second prince of this kingdom. His identical twin brother is this character here. He's the focus of the second storyline, and his retainer guy, this guy, is his childhood friend, Neos. And they have the blushies for each other, but they just don't do anything about it. So the first story is about these two helping a little boy who discovers he has magic, and he hurts his mom, and so they're helping him like fix that. Anyway, you too, Justy. And it was fine, and then the second one was people start disappearing from the kingdom, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And so the king, who is this character's old like twin brother, he gets involved, and he gets cursed. He gets hit by the same curse that all these people who are disappearing have gotten hit by, and which means that he ends up in the loveless universe. No, he ends up with ears, cat ears, and a tail, like so. And they're like, wait, why does he turn into a cat-eared boy? And there's this whole thing about his necklace. It's stopping him from turning from full cat. It's quite like, there's a lot of story and like world building and potential and stuff like this in this book. I wouldn't read it for the romance, because there's not really any of that. It's relegated to like side hints. There's a lot of like fantasy magic and a little bit of action and scheming and saving the day, and that's all fun and dandy. But it's just this volume as well, so it could potentially be expanded on. But it's like, it didn't really impress me. I'm probably never going to read this again. Yeah. They're at some point, all of these characters turn into cats. So I would say if you're a cat lover, this might be your thing. More so than a straight up BL fan. I'd recommend this to the cat fans in the audience versus someone wanting like a progressive, like a lot of progression in regards to, you know, BL romance. But yeah, it was like one of the, I don't know, just, it's pretty looking. I didn't find it particularly funny. I thought it was generally all around well put together. But again, I'm probably never going to read it again. So, yeah, didn't super impress me. And I don't really, well, I mean, I do know why it's under the Love Love label. But also, yeah. BL means boys love Sturgeon. Gay manga, yaoi. I don't like that term, and it's very out of date. BL is what we call manga that focuses on boys kissing boys. BL boys love, like it's in the name. And then the other BL title that I read, and I did really enjoy this one. I had a feeling that I would, so that's not that surprising. And that is Our Not So Lonely Travel Guide by Monae Sorai. Well, if you're scared, then there's nothing I can do about that. Probably best for you to leave. This is the story of two 29-year-old guys who are dating, who decide to take a round-the-world trip. And after completing their world trip, they have decided that they're getting married. And we don't know all of the specifics as for why this is, but these characters, it seems that this was instigated by one of them having a very serious medical scare. And so after he was released from hospital, they decided that they're going to go around and see the world and travel and experience things together whilst they still can. So we have like quite a serious, also kind of anxious guy, Asahi, and then his boyfriend Mitsuki, who is like very outgoing, very personable, a little bit like this sort of couple dynamic I tend to regard as like a black cat or like a grumpy cat and then a golden retriever. It's definitely this dynamic. Blackwind, absolutely check this one out because I really liked it. I'm a fan of travel anyway, so it definitely appeals to me. And so in this volume, we have their kind of take off their initial leaving of Japan, and then they go to Thailand, India, and then Georgia, the country, not the state. And they go to different places, meet different people, see different things, experience different cultures. I really liked this chapter in Thailand, namely because I've been to Thailand, so I saw a lot of like very familiar things that I had experienced there. I actually have family from Thailand, or extended family from Thailand. And then it had really interesting discussion about why Thailand is so welcoming to a lot of the LGBT community as well, and discussion of gender. And the people that they meet there are really, like, it's a wonderful way, I think, that they could start their journey. And then India, which is just so full of so many amazing things. And then finally they go to Georgia, namely because Asahi is a big fan of wine. He's always wanted to travel there because that's where wine was invented. And that kind of introduces our biggest conflict, because we then are introduced to a woman who coincidentally is there, but who was also the high school sweetheart girlfriend of Mitsuki. And so we've had this illusion that the two of them have been interested in each other for a long time, but never had the courage to say anything or act on that until they were a lot older, until they reconnected, until they were able to be more aware of their feelings. And so I think it's really wonderful seeing how they grow closer over the course of this book. I look forward to the next one. And I think if it sounds like something you're interested in, I definitely would recommend it. I am really on the verge of kicking some people in the chat out. So anyway, but yeah, I think if this sounds like your thing, if you like even travelogue, not even necessarily for the characters and the relationship, although I do say that it's a good, yeah, that's it. Hopefully that will be the end of it. I'm serious. I do not put up with that shit. So if you're not wanting to hang around, leave before I kick you out, because it's not that I take it personally. I don't give a shit what you think about what I enjoy. I mean, I don't know why you'd hang around if you'd want to, seemingly belittle an entire genre. But if you're uncomfortable with how some people choose to live their lives, how fiction portrays how certain people live their lives, I refuse. I refuse to encourage that. I ask you to go, and probably also unsubscribe, because it's not worth it to me to have that attitude in my community and in the people who are watching. I don't find it funny. They're not funny jokes. And so again, final warning. And it's over, so I don't know why I let you keep going, but you're lucky. You're lucky in that this is a live stream, because otherwise you would just be completely booted off the channel if you left a comment like that on one of my other videos. All right, I hope I'm clear about that. Anyway, apologies everyone else who is probably just wanting to hear about the other books that I've been reading. So, okay. I think we'll end on a more positive note. Not that the book wasn't positive. I was very positively affected by that book, and I do recommend it. But I will end the live stream on what really everybody comes to these live streams for, and that is, of course, the clamp. The clamp that I read this week. I'll start with the good, because of course I will. I don't want to torture myself entirely. But I had to jump between the two when reading these, because I could only put up with so much before everything else. So, firstly is, of course, Holic. We have volumes 14, 15, and 16. So, you may notice that between 15 and 16, we lose a character from the covers. It was something that I was aware of, plot-wise, but even so, even knowing that something is coming, it can still be very affecting. So, in the course of this volume and volume 15, we have the end of, I guess, the first chapter, the first preamble, maybe, of Holic, which is Watanuki working at the store for Yuko. There is a lot of fun to be had. I mean, I say fun. It's quite foreboding, knowing that things are coming. Knowing that things are like, you can know that there's stuff going on in the series, and that there's like a lot happening under the surface. And regarding the series as a whole, this point has been coming for a while as it is, right? Basically, at a point in volume 15, spoilers for a 15-year-old manga also, by the way, Yuko disappears, leaves, dies, perhaps. She is no longer. She no longer exists, but Watanuki believes that she will be back. And so in order to see her again, in order to reunite, he becomes the new owner of this store. He becomes the one to grant wishes and to help people. And in order to do so, he becomes bound to the store itself. He can no longer leave. And then we have, halfway through this volume, a time skip. We enter into the new chapter of this series, quite literally, where Watanuki is in this store, in this in this, in everything that was Yuko's. He's taken over her responsibility, her position, her place in helping people with their various issues, their various problems. And then, but the outside world has kept moving. He can no longer age, so Domoki comes to visit after university. So obviously time has moved on. Watanuki looks the same. Everyone around him is aging. It's been 4 or 5 years. And so we get a glimpse into how the store is run now, how Watanuki is finding his place as someone who was otherwise just really at first wanting to escape this. He was wanting to not be able to see spirits. So it's quite interesting to see how much he's changed. I've said it over the last several volumes, that the amount of character development that he's gotten, despite all the wacky, crazy weirdness that's happened over the course of the series, and not just Clamp wacky craziness, just general wacky craziness. It's so wonderful to see how much he's developed, how much more empathetic, how much more involved with other people's lives. But now, being in this unique position, he has to realize that, he can't get too involved. He can't solve the world's problems. He can't help people at the sake of harming himself. And that's something he struggled with before Yuko left. But now it's also something that he's had to try and muddle his way through since he's left. It was a good time. I really enjoyed. I only have 3 volumes left. And then I have the sequel. And then I'm caught up. And I will hate it because I will be happy that I've experienced the series in full, as it were. I mean, the sequel's on hiatus, as with everything. But I'm also going to be sad because it means that all of the rest of the Clamp stuff that I have to read, aside from maybe like X and Tokyo Babylon, is not going to be stuff I enjoy. But I probably will enjoy a chunk of Tsubasa, majority chunk of Tsubasa, but all the rest I have no patience for, right? And that is paramount in comparison, because I also read Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, 4 volumes of this. Oh my goodness, volumes 3 to 6. This is the sequel to the ever popular Cardcaptor Sakura. This series basically is a direct sequel to the original. I had a lot of problems with the original. I was not a nostalgic fan of the original. So all of the problems, I was like, these are big problems and I do not like. This is not good. So the series has introduced a new little girl character. What is her name? Oh my gosh. Why does nobody have any names on the back of the thing? Akiho, right? This girl, who is basically a carbon copy of Sakura. I hope that Hulk gets a re-release too. The thing about Clamp works is that they're quite easy to read because it is like 90% aesthetic and then 2% word bubbles and 8% plot. So there's a lot of pretty art, but you can speed through them quite easy. Especially if you're not that interested. So there's this new little girl She's a foreign exchange. Well, no, she's traveled around everywhere. She's lived in a whole bunch of different countries. And I presumed it was with her parents because she's a 13-year-old girl. That's typically how that's done. But no. She just lives alone with her handsome butler, or housekeeper or whatever, caretaker, who she's also in love with. And when she first mentioned that she had someone she was in love with, I said, I sure hope it isn't the 35-year-old that you live with. And I don't think he's 35, but he's definitely not age appropriate, because I doubt that a uber wealthy family would leave their child, no matter what, despite all of the things that are revealed through the course of these books. You would leave your child with this guy who looks admittedly, maybe 18. But she says that he's been with her forever, for ages, and looking after her for ages. So he has to, there's no way that he's not at least 20. And that's Clamp. His name is also Yuna D. Kaito. And I spoke earlier with Ray, who was in the chat before. I think she may have gone to bed, hopefully, knowing her. But I said, is this meant to be a guy that I'm supposed to know? Is this a reference to another series, or does he just look like every other two face designs that Clamp does? See, okay, Rin, yes and no. They kind of just were well, we can't get away with student-teacher relationships. That they didn't get rid of the boy, the little boy, and the who had magic and stuff, and his weird relationship with the female adult teacher. They're still in here. They're still living it up, living it out, having a great life in England. Ariel and whatever the girl's name is, that guy. But they're okay, well, we can't address this 11-year-old who's getting married to her teacher who's in his 30s. So we're just gonna have her go to a different middle school. We'll never have to address it again. But then she shows up in this book briefly. But it's oh, hey, look, remember this girl? I'm yeah, I do, actually. I remember it very well, and it's still weird. Why? Also, holy crap. So this panel, it's a conversation immediately. I didn't know. So it just says, welcome home, Sakura-san. First of all, this is her father. Why is he using suffix, honorifics with his daughter, his actual child? I thought it was the other guy. I thought it was her brother's boyfriend, Yukito. Because tell me that they don't look exactly the same. This 40-year-old man looks identical to the other teenager. They are both on this page. You cannot tell me that this guy does not look like this guy. He is different from he, and so you can probably see my confusion, right? That's understandable. Oh my god. And then obviously, because this is, and I said it to my friends earlier in the day, obviously because this is a baby book for babies, right? This is, Cardcaptor Sakura isn't high literature. You don't need a freaking English degree to figure out what's going on, especially because they spell it out so many freaking times. But we discover that Butler Boy is evil, or he's doing some wacky bad magic. And it's kind of like, oh, is the little girl in on it? Maybe she isn't. Maybe she is. I would not be surprised. Honestly, I would not be surprised if it turns out that the entirety of this, the whole premise of this new little girl, because you find out later, spoilers for a not very good series, but you find out later that she's like the current youngest of the Clow family or whatever, which but she has no magical abilities, but actually maybe she does, but actually maybe it's bullshit, and her family rejected her because they don't think that she has any magic powers, and there's so much Alice in Wonderland motif, and and then Ray reminded me that Phi D Fluorite also has the D initial, which means that Kaito is absolutely a relative or a freaking reincarnation. I'm half convinced that the little girl is just a Sakura clone, because look at that. There's so many Sharons. There's so many Sharons in this freaking multiverse of series, right? Like there's Sharon, just little boy Sharon. There's Sharon in Tsubasa / Holic and clone Sharon. Meanwhile, main character of this one also related to Sharon. I am convinced that every character is Sharon. This should be Cardcaptor Sharon, because I don't think that it's out of the realm to just assume that they're all clones of Sharon. Everyone is Sharon. I like Sharon. Like, Sharon's a good kid. He's 70% of why I read this thing. I read Cardcaptor Sakura. I come for the pretty cute, but like, I don't know. I have such a low tolerance for just like, oh, cuteness. Oh, isn't she cute? Oh, that's so cute. Oh, so cute and sweet and lovely. Was never my thing. It aggravates me, and so I'm not like infatuated with the idea of Sakura being cute, right? I read this for one because I'm just trying to get through it, right? I'm trying to be like, okay, I'm gonna try Clamp stuff. You know, I'll just keep plugging through. I think I'm pretty sure they don't get married in the anime, but they're still like, oh yes, we're fated lovers, and we are definitely going to be together once I graduate elementary school. And you're like, yikes! I mean, it's bad enough that Sakura's father, I don't know his name, creepy teacher man, fell in love with his student as well and impregnated her before she graduated. And like every time he's never at the house. And it's like, oh yeah, he's always at work. And I'm like, I would not be surprised if he's just trying to have another relationship with another one of his teenage students. Because I presume he still works at a high school. Yeah, big yikes. They're not going to do that because they're fated, and their relationship was so love. Oh my god, there was it this one. The grandpa. First of all, Sharon and Sakura go on a date, but her great grandpa is like, oh, come to visit me. And I don't know when they told her that he was actually related to her, because last time in the original series, don't think I don't forget, Clamp. In the original series, he faked. He was like, oh, I'm just a mystery man. They never told her that this was her great grandfather. They just hung out, and she's like, and he's like, oh, you remind me so much of somebody, and meaning her mother, who was his beloved grandchild. He was really very invested in his granddaughter, which on one hand, absolutely understandable, because he's like, no, I don't support this marriage of my 16-year-old granddaughter and her teacher, who is in his late 20s at least. I don't. And I'm like, sir, you are the only rational one in your family. But then now, but also he has like, her room is exactly the same. He never got over her death, so it's just immaculately, hermetically sealed. It's weird. And then he invites them over, and he's like, oh, why are all the men that steal my beloved grandchildren away so likable? I'm like, yeah, at least Sharon is the same age as Sakura. These are not comparable situations. Leave this poor 13-year-old boy alone. This is, sir, you had your priorities straight the first time. This time is kind of not your business, because you don't have a relationship with this little girl really whatsoever. I know you're trying to reconnect, but no. So yeah, and then I just, so much Alice in Wonderland. There's also another point that Ray brought up earlier today when I was complaining about this to her. The fact that there's like all of these time gears, because that's the whole big thing, is there's Alice in Wonderland motif, and the White Rabbit, and so I'm late, pocket watch stuff. And maybe that could be related to Yuko because she's a time witch. I don't know. There's just like a lot of stuff that I feel like now I'm overthinking it, because I know how much bullshit Clamp puts into their title. So now I feel like I'm just trying to find stuff, trying to think of things of like how things are connected. And it's still really stupid. Like, I still hate it all. But at least with like drag and drop, right? I could be like, oh yay, there's a chapter where I see Watanuki. I'm never gonna see Watanuki in Cardcaptor Sakura. And it makes me sad, because he's the only character that deserves rights. He's not gonna marry a 5-year-old because of fate or whatever. But yeah, I read this series, one, because I feel contractually obligated to, although I wish, like, I don't know what contract with who, or any of that. I don't know the specifics. I don't have a contract with anyone to read Clamp. Somebody pay me to read Clamp. That'd be great. No, I just subject this to myself. I don't know, for no real reason, aside to say that, yes, I've read it, and yes, I formed my own opinions. I also read it because I think that Sharon blushing is cute. And, I mean, Yue is fine. I don't care about Kettle. I don't care about... I think Toya, the brother, he's an interesting character. He's not in it nearly enough. Honestly, Toya and his boyfriend / Yue need to be in it more. I don't care about anyone else. Honestly, Sakura, you and this clone girl, uninteresting. Just not interested at all. I don't care about the cards. I don't care about this grand evil plot that this bad wizard boy is doing. Although you know that it's Clamp. He's not actually gonna be evil. He's not. That nobody's actually evil. There's like one guy in the entire universe of Clamp two guys that are actually evil. The rest of them are misunderstood. They're working for the greater good, and that's what it's gonna be. And it's just, why even? First of all, why is this series already 10 volumes long? Watanuki is the only character with any common sense, also. Because he's the good one. He comes from the good series. Why is this 10 volumes long already? The original is 12. Why? End it, Clamp. End it. I know it's super popular and you love your baby, but like, I don't care. And the sooner you're finished with it, the sooner I can be finished with it, the sooner I never have to commit brain space to it. You know what would be great, actually? Because I've also made this joke. Honestly, I am the worst person to be around, I guess, when I'm reading, because I'm a noisy reader. I talk to myself. I make jokes to myself when I'm reading. I laugh. I like make noises. I'm just a noisy reader. Reading is meant to be, I guess, a subdued, quiet experience. No. When I'm reading this, half the time I break out into song because there'll be a really stupid line that reminds me of a song. Which there's one of these volumes where I started singing "Mbop" from Hanson because there was a noise, like a sound effect that was like "Bump," and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song. I feel like I would aggravate anyone who I'm in the vicinity of when I'm reading, or it might be really entertaining. I don't know, one of the two. But oh my gosh, I made the joke to myself because I'm the only person here that you could, because of the D, because it's like Luna D Kaito, which obviously, as Ray mentioned to me, because my brain is not as full of the Clamp lore, even though I know this character, it didn't immediately register to me that like Phi D Fluorite is his full name. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so they're definitely interrelated. But I did immediately think of Monkey D. Luffy, obviously from One Piece, and I was like, see, One Piece could be part of the Clamp multiverse. This is see, the thing is, 9 times out of 10, I've dropped a lot of things over the course of my manga reading history, but there's something that there's something just like an experience with this sort of series, and not that they're comparable, because like Attack on Titan is another one that I finished just because I was that far into it. But that one's like legitimately bad on a lot of different levels. This is just not for me, and I'm not the core audience, and it's fine. I'm more like, I drop a lot of series. I talk a lot more about the series that I don't drop versus the ones that I do. But sometimes I will continue a series that I'm not paying for. So if I can get it from my library, or if I can read it through like my Crunchyroll Simulpubs or whatever, then I will keep reading it just because I want to know just like how far crazy or just wild or whatever that the series has gotten. And also to have an informed opinion on it. Like, I've read a lot worse. I've read a lot worse than Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card. By far, I read the entirety of Bakuman, which is a commitment, because that is a wordy and it's actually legitimately probably a hate crime. That series is bad. I've read and enjoyed series that are probably worse than this, by other people's standards. I think it's just a personal way that I approach it. But if I haven't paid for it, right? Like if I haven't paid money for it, if I'm reading it for free, then I don't mind. Then I don't have an issue with continuing it. Yeah. Clamp is like, it's an aggravating time, but it's also interesting. It's interesting to see just the pure chaos that have come from these women's minds. To see just how indulgent they can get with everything, to see how they can take a premise that's relatively interesting and then just make it so wackadoo with all of their other interrelated stuff. It's just, it's a kind of a little bit like sport, maybe, in that I want to see how it plays out. I want to see the execution of it, because I don't know, things that I drop to typically end up stuff that like are just boring, just straight up not interesting to me, or just immediately offensive to me, immediately obvious that I am not the core audience for, and in a way that's, not as in your face, or more in your face than something like Cardcaptor Sakura. This isn't offensive. It's just dumb and silly and takes itself way too seriously. And is, like with most Clamp stuff, self-involved. But yeah, I can't even remember what the last thing I dropped was, because I'm pretty good about my reading otherwise. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that I read from the library, or that I've tried from the library, at least, that I've been like, no. Oh, Ubel Blatt. That was probably one of the more recent ones that I dropped, because that one was just terrible. That was just the worst. Clamp is definitely, like, there's so much. I shouldn't have to reiterate this, and I know that you know this, Rin, but like, I have great respect for them. I don't have anything against them. It's phenomenal that they're able to keep continuing making the content that they want to make, but it's definitely content that is for a very specific group of people. Sir John, that was absolutely not for you. It's not. You're not that important, I hate to tell you. But yeah, I have great respect for them as creators. I don't have much fondness for a lot of their titles. And as a reading experience, it's always somewhat interesting to see what I do like out of a series that they make versus what I don't like from a series that they make. But honestly, Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card just feels like a tacked on afterthought sequel that shouldn't need to exist, right? Like the original had a very conclusive, happy ending, tied up all the loose ends, and it feels superfluous to the series. Like, why do we need this? We don't need this. It's just because Cardcaptor Sakura is popular. Sakura and Sharon and Tomoyo are popular. There was no need for this to continue expanding on the world of Cardcaptor Sakura. It was a done story. And also as a sequel, the fact that it is so much longer, or like it's getting to the length of the original, seems odd as well, because obviously they've made sequels of a lot of their titles, but kind of abandons them halfway through or at certain points. And aside from X, that's not really understandable why they would do that for, Drag and Drop and Holic Ray and Tsubasa World Chronicle, which are only like a couple volumes, like a handful of volumes each. I understand economically and profitability wise why Cardcaptor Sakura is the choice. I don't understand intellectually why it was the most obvious choice for continuation when it had a conclusive ending that I think 99.99% of fans were happy with, right? I just don't know why you would continue. It kind of goes to my belief that there's always a natural conclusion to every story. And I feel like Sakura and Shaoran and Tomoyo and all the rest found that. They found that in the original series. They got all the cloud cards. They saved the day. Magic is wonderful. Shaoran and Sakura are together again. All this other stuff. They did that. Now they're reinventing or reiterating things that they did in the original with a new villain and new cards and new outfits to make more figures of, and it just feels like less of the fact that they had a real story that they wanted to tell, and more like, hey, this was our most popular series ever, and it hit its 25th anniversary. Let's try to make some more money out of it. It kind of reminds me of like the never ending elements of stuff like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto / Boruto, like just something that isn't allowed to end on terms that fans are happy with. And obviously I'm not the fan base for this series. I wasn't a huge fan of the original, but many people are. I don't know how many people, even very dedicated Clamp fans, find this wholly necessary at the sake of other titles that they want to see continued from them, or new properties. But yeah. I have some dust, and I've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes, so that'll do it. So that's everything that I read this week. Lots of, two Clamp titles. One that I obviously enjoyed, was very happy with. I not to no surprise of anyone, is the singular, perhaps one of a few Clamp titles that I do enjoy. And again, I'm not a Clamp hater. I just don't enjoy most of their stuff. And then Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, which is just I didn't like and continued to just be unimpressed with. I also read 2 BL series. One that, again, I really liked a lot, with our Not So Lonely Planet travel guide. Really wonderful. Again, I hate to recommend Tokyo Pop titles due to moral conflict, but it is very, very good. And The Treasure of the King and the Cat, which is generally skippable. Generally, I don't think it's, unless you're someone who really likes fantasy and really likes cats more than the idea of seeing romance, then yeah, this might be interesting to you, but it was just kind of fine. Didn't impress me a huge amount. My absolute surprise of this week's reading, of course, being Kaiju Girl Caramelized. Really sweet, really lovely, funny, really executed very, very well. Lovely art style. Really likable protagonist. Really likable, like, romantic male lead. Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to continuing this one. Then I read a whole chunk of Orasama Teacher, the less funny series from Izumi Tsubaki. This means that I am, oh my gosh, 17 days here. I am 2/3 of the way through the series. You know, it's funny. It has its moments. It's not one that I dedicate 30 volumes worth of shelf space to, but it's fine. You know, it's fine. Flying Witch, volumes 1 and 2. Again, a library read, one that was relatively sweet and lovely and everything that I expected from it. It did things pretty much as wanted, as enjoyed. It reminded me a lot of Barakamon, of Yotsuba in certain elements. Just any sort of like slice of life, but with a magical element to it as well. Kiki's delivery service is definitely another very familiar comparison, I think. And yeah, just sweet and lovely and cute. And I do want to try the anime for this. Haru's Curse, which was wonderful. Really enjoyed this. Well, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but it was very impactful, very emotional, very genuine, and generally kind, and portrays the complicated nature of the situation with a lot of nuance. And I just really appreciated how it portrayed various types of love and not, you know, putting one over the other. It's very, very good, which should be no surprise. The spin-off continuation of Aka 13, P.S. Enjoyable, great little addition to the original series. Really only one for fans of the original, though. I wouldn't say, like, go out and buy this if you haven't read the original. It's very much in Ono style, both storytelling-wise and art style-wise, obviously, characters. It does expound on a lot of the side characters a bit more, and I think from following her current stuff, she's still playing around in the world of Aka, so it'll be interesting to see how many of those we may see in the future from Yen Press, depending on how well these, this stuff does. And then I also read Orange Future, or Volume 6, which was very, very good. Kind of what-if side story. I'll look at some of the side characters again, or one of the side characters in particular again. The alternate timeline that kind of was briefly looked at but never explored in the original manga series. And then also No Vampire, No Happy End, which was a very unfunny comedy from Tokyo Pop that I didn't enjoy. Forgot what its gimmick was, got very confused halfway through, and then ended, and then had 5 pages of author's notes to try and cram in everything else that I'd forgotten about, or couldn't fit into the actual series itself. So, lots of reading done. Once again, no prose. I did want to read a light novel this week, but I've had a lot of other stuff going on in life, so I haven't had that much time to read. I say, I've read so many books, but manga is super quick to get through. Super fast to read. But yeah. Thanks everyone for hanging around. I hope next time some of the comment behavior is a little bit better. I don't like to I'd hope that I encourage a more positive community here on the channel, and hopefully that will encourage people to behave in a more appropriate manner in the future, especially if they do want to hang out with me in the live streams. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful and happy week. Look after yourselves. Keep yourself healthy. You know, we're still in a global pandemic, no matter what people say. And look after yourselves. Be sure to actually read the things that you buy, and I hope you enjoy them, as I usually do. Despite my griping over certain series, I wouldn't be reading them if I wasn't gaining some sort of level of interest and enjoyment out of them. Maybe not the intended. And if I straight up hate something, I will tell you the reasons why. For as many issues as Clamp have, I don't straight up hate their series. They're not for me. Be sure to read, enjoy, look after yourselves, sleep well, which I will hopefully be doing in just a moment once I log off here. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your weekend. I'll catch you in the next video, whatever that may be. It won't be a whole video. Might be another live stream like this. Might be an art book video, or actually, I think I have a review due. Otherwise, enjoy yourselves. I will catch you in the next one, and bye till then.